Today's topic, and what we're going to talk about, is something very close to my heart, very ironic, but it's something super, super important in the healing space, and that is coping with heartbreak. Before I even jump in, I'm going to ask you, how many of you feel like you've had a massive heartbreak in your life at some point? Right? Okay, that's basically every single person on here that at least that I can see. Now, how many of you who raised your hands can say that that heartbreak left you with some serious pain and almost a crippling pain in some sense? Doesn't even have to be physical, it can be emotional. Left you debilitated, left you challenged, left you in a difficult spot. Yeah, it's so crazy. It wasn't necessarily something that physically happened to us. It wasn't even something necessarily traumatic that someone had to say or do to us. It was the loss of something. It was the loss of something that created this intense pain. So a couple of questions in here when we talk about grief, and I just to give you a little recap, because I think a lot of you may not have been to the previous session. Grief, when you lose a person, when a person dies, and grief when you have heartbreak and heartache are actually very similar. And the reason is because your heart doesn't really know the difference, and even your brain doesn't really know the difference between when you lose something and someone's dead, or you lose something in terms of a relationship. Why? Because both ways you're attaching to something. That's the key part of what creates heartache and grief, is the attachment that we have to it. And so the recovery process at the end of the day of heartache and grief is actually about unwinding the attachment we get. So here's something crazy. How does that make sense? Actually, when you lose a person in your life, when someone, maybe a family member or someone close to you, sometimes that's easier to deal with than the pain of a heartbreak. Because when you lose someone with grief, your mind and your ego unconsciously create closure. There's no way you can go back to actually talking to them and asking them questions and saying I wish you said something to me or not. I wish you could help me heal, blah, blah, blah. But when you lose a person in a relationship, your ego knows that they're still around. They're still available somewhere. And so the different stages of grief, which I'm going to briefly run through before I pass it on to our special guest today, but your ego tends to want to go into what we call the bargaining stage, or trying to communicate, or trying to get that person back, or feeling really vulnerable because they're like, why did why did this end? Why did you choose someone else over me? Why is this not working right now? And so we want to try and reach out back to them. We want to try and communicate. We want to send that text, in the middle of the night when we're drunk, all of those things, because our ego is not processing fully why we were so attached to them in the first place. My biggest tool to anybody going through heartbreak, you have to process and go through all the symptoms and all the stages of grief. But the biggest tool that I give people when they're processing grief is, why did that person matter to you that much? That's a much bigger and better question than asking myself or saying to myself that this relationship was just everything and now I've lost it. And so, I'm in massive pain. When you're able to figure out, so this question, why does someone matter to me that much? Why does this person matter to me that much? What did they give me? What did they make me feel? As you start to process it and discover it, you'll realize that that person was just a stimulator of the feelings that you felt inside you. They were giving you the opportunity to feel a certain way, to feel seen, heard, to be validated, to be recognized, maybe to have beautiful and joyful experiences with. The problem is when we have a massive heartbreak, we feel like our access to all of those things is completely gone. But that's not true. The access to those things lives inside you. That person was just the stimulant, which is why I ask people, what did they make you feel? How did they make you feel? What is that special feeling that you had inside you when you're with them? When you're able to rationally write down that entire list of what you got from them, or what you felt from them, or how you connected, after the heartbreak, when you deal with the stage of a lot of the stage of maybe the anger, the loss, you get into the space of, how can I find these things again? How can I reproduce this feeling for myself again? Again, the ego is going to want to step into, trying to attach to someone else to try and find these things again, because that's the quickest way for us to feel validation, right? Is for the external to give it to us. But when you're able to actually look at that list and say, okay, how can I get this feeling of joy? How can I get this feeling of celebration? How can I get this feeling of being recognized and noticed? And if you're able to actually look and give yourself, a whole bunch of options of how you can create that for yourself, you'll notice you'll process the heartbreak so much faster.
Hey, and welcome to the Inner Yats YouTube page. If you like our content, make sure you click the like and the subscribe button so that you get more of these amazing videos that keep coming your way.